Decades later, Emil, now an old man, stood at that same door holding a letter. It was from Germany. A woman named Anna Weber had written, "My father never came home from the war, but he wrote once in his last letter about a French woman who forgave him. I just wanted to know if she was real." Emil smiled sadly. He looked out at the falling snow. "Yes," he whispered. "She was real." Long pause. War took everything from them. But in that house, for one brief moment, humanity found its way back. The war ended months later. The Americans liberated Montclair. The villagers began to rebuild. Marie buried Carl on the hill beside her husband. No uniform, no flag, just a small wooden cross with a single word carved into it: human. When her children asked who he was, she said, "He was a soldier. He did terrible things. But in the end, he remembered what it meant to be human." Years passed. The house was rebuilt, the cellar filled with wine instead of fear. But every winter, when the snow began to fall, Marie would light a candle by the window, one for Jean, and one for Carl. Days turned into weeks. The front lines moved east. The guns grew distant. Carl stayed hidden in the cellar, surviving on scraps of bread and silence. Marie avoided the neighbors. She told no one. At night, when the children slept, she'd lift the cellar hatch and pass him food. They began to talk, little by little, about his mother, about her garden before the war, about how both of them had lost people they loved. One night, he asked quietly, "What happened to your husband?" She froze. Her eyes filled with tears. "They took him in 1942, she said. "They said he was helping the resistance." "He never came back." Carl looked down. Something inside him broke. He remembered a day, 2 years ago, a name scribbled on a list, an order shouted, a gun fired in a field. He had been there. He didn't know the man's name, but he remembered the scream. And the ring the man wore, a ring with a small cross on it. Carl's hand trembled. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a dull metal ring. He had carried it ever since that day without knowing why. He placed it on the table. Marie's eyes widened. Her breath caught in her throat. "That ring," she whispered. It was Jean's micro-hook. He had been ordered to protect her, but he had already destroyed her world. For a long time, neither spoke. The fire cracked softly. Outside, snow began to fall again. Carl finally said, voice shaking, "I didn't know his name. I didn't know." It was him. "I was following orders." She stared at him. Rage, disbelief, grief, all swirling together. "You killed him," she said quietly. He didn't deny it. "Then why are you still here?" Carl's eyes glistened. "Because I can't change what I've done. But maybe I can protect what's left." He picked up his rifle, and this time he loaded it. "The Americans will come soon. If any of my men return, they'll search every house." "I won't let them touch your children." She looked at him, the man who had taken her husband, now promising to save her children. It made no sense, and yet she believed him. That night they heard the trucks again. German stragglers, desperate, angry, drunk. They were searching for food and revenge. Marie's heart pounded. Carl whispered, "Stay down." He stepped outside into the snow. 3 soldiers approached. One recognized him. "Weber, you're alive!" Carl nodded slowly. They looked toward the house. "Anyone inside?" Carl hesitated, then said, "Empty. Already searched." The soldiers moved closer. "Then what are you guarding?" He lifted his rifle. "Go, there's nothing here," they laughed. "Since when do you give orders, Weber?" The laughter stopped when the first shot rang out. Carl fired twice. He hit one, missed another. The third returned fire. The sound echoed through the village. Then silence. Marie rushed out, screaming his name. Carl lay in the snow, blood staining his uniform. He smiled faintly. "They're safe," he whispered. "You're safe." She fell to her knees beside him. Tears froze on her cheeks. "Why?" she cried. "Why would you do this?" He looked at her one last time. "Because he would have," beat, and then nothing. The door creaked open. Marie stood frozen, her hands clutching a knife behind her back. Her children hid behind her skirt. Carl raised his hand slowly. "I'm not here to hurt you. he said in broken French. I just need water. She stared at the insignia on his coat, the same eagle that had taken everything from her. You should leave, she whispered, but her voice trembled. He looked half dead. Outside, the wind howled again, and she saw the blood on his sleeve. He wasn't a monster. He was a boy. Please, he said again, barely standing. I haven't eaten in 2 days. Her hand shook. Her mind screamed no, but her heart didn't move. She stepped aside. Come in, she whispered. The fire flickered inside. Carl sat on the floor, clutching his arm. Marie poured water into a tin cup, her eyes never leaving him. Where are your men? She asked. Dead, he said softly, then added, maybe lucky. Silence. Emil peeked from behind a chair, staring at the enemy soldier. Carl managed a small, tired smile. You're brave, he told the boy. Emil didn't answer. That night, Carl fell asleep by the fire, his rifle beside him, but unloaded. Marie stayed awake, watching him breathe. Every rise of his chest was a reminder of the uniform that haunted her dreams. And yet, as she watched, she realized something strange. He looked nothing like the monsters from her nightmares. He looked lost. Microhook. She wanted to hate him, but she couldn't. By morning, he tried to leave. I won't bring danger to your family, he said, adjusting his torn coat. But as he opened the door, distant engines echoed through the valley. American patrols. They were moving in. If they find you, she warned, they'll shoot. He turned back, eyes full of quiet resignation. Then maybe I deserve it. Marie hesitated. Hide, she said finally. She pointed to the small cellar under the floorboards. Until they pass. He stared at her, disbelief and gratitude tangled in his eyes. Why, he asked. She didn't answer. She just said, go. December 1944, Eastern France. The village of Montclair had been swallowed by war. For months, German troops had used it as a staging post before retreating east. Every doorstep bore the mark of soldiers who had come and gone, taking food, taking sons, leaving fear behind. In one of the last standing cottages lived Marie Duval, a widow of 29 with 2 small children. Emile, aged 8, and Clara, just 5. Her husband, Jean, had been taken by the Germans 2 years ago. No one ever heard from him again. Marie's nights were filled with the same sound, marching boots in the distance. And the same fear, would they come again? That winter morning they did. The war was collapsing for Germany. Retreats had turned chaotic. Columns were scattered. And among the lost, desperate men was Private Karl Weber, 23 years old, from a small town near Dresden. He had been separated from his unit for 3 days. No food, no orders. Only one command remained burned in his mind. Clean the village. No witnesses. When he reached Montclair, he was starving, shaking, and barely able to hold his rifle. He saw smoke from a chimney and walked toward it. He told himself it was for warmth. But deep inside, he knew he was walking toward something else. Something he didn't understand yet. Microhook. He had no idea whose door he was about to knock on. The wind howled through the ruins of the village. Snow drifted across broken walls, over burnt carts, and the bodies that no one dared to move anymore. A lone soldier walked down the street, his rifle trembling in his hands. His boots crunched the ice. His breath came out in clouds. And in the silence of that dying afternoon, he knocked on a wooden door. Inside, a woman froze. Her 2 children stared at her, wide-eyed. The same uniform that had taken her husband now stood outside her home, and yet he didn't shout. He didn't kick the door. He just whispered, "Please! I need shelter." Beat. He was the enemy, but he looked more human than soldier.